Hey guys, told you I'd film this video for you, going over a little bit of PBIS, little social emotional learning, and then I'm going to answer some questions that I got on that survey at the very end, I'll do my best. Hope this message or this video finds you well. I know that about 8:30 this morning, we all evacuated the building. Maybe it was about 9:30. We all evacuated the building. We're Twitter famous now. We made Joe Imel's Twitter. And as if 2020 wasn't already weird and crazy enough, we had to make it just a little bit crazier. What way would you expect to come back to school than, having to evacuate after first hour and a half of PD? So we've come to expect the unexpected, that's for sure. But so let me get you started on this, and I'll go through it as quickly as possible. Don't want to just really, it's just going to be skimming the surface, but I have handbooks for you guys. This is a PowerPoint that kind of goes over the handbook, but I have a handbook for you that will outline everything that you need for our PBIS system this year. And I want you to know that I'm going to do all in my power, and I think our PBIS team, or I know our PBIS team, is dedicated to doing all that they can to make this a consistent process and a consistent system that will be implemented to the best of our ability this year. One thing that we will rely on is you guys helping us do that in terms of handing out swag tags and doing a couple things that I'll talk about today. So if you'll just follow along with me for a few minutes, it may take a little while, but I hope that you'll get some good out of this video. First, I want to show you that I did share a drive with all of you. I made a drive this morning, and it is called WCHS PBIS 20/21. You can access everything in our handbook that I'm going to go over today here, okay, including the discipline matrix for Warren Central High School. So if you have any questions, need to know where to find anything, it can be found here for you guys to have available to you. So let's get started real quick. Just a quick table of contents on the handbook that I will be giving each of you. I'll probably now just put one in each mailbox. So team members, let's talk just a real quick overview about who you can go to for what in terms of behavior, positive behavior intervention systems, and some SEL things, which is social emotional learning. Myself, I'll kind of, for lack of better terms, be the administrator for our PBIS team, but I'm certainly not the expert on these things. So all of these people on this list probably know a little bit more than I do, or maybe a lot more in some cases. So Miss Potter, she's going to be our coach or our reward. I'll call her a specialist. She's going to be over all of our rewards this year. And I put math teacher on there because this was being shared with Stacy Lindsay, who you guys met earlier today, and she didn't know who some of you were, so I just kind of put what you were out beside your name or in your position, so she would understand a little bit more. Todd Stewart, Mr. Stewart, Coach Stewart, Miss Gentry are going to be obviously our behavior and academic interventionists. They live this life every day, guys, and they are a very, very good resource for you. Miss Comer will be our guidance counselor. I wanted to add Miss Lauren on here because she is our mental health counselor or specialist, or she's really our go-to when it comes to mental health and social emotional learning, and she's been a great help and support for this process. Miss Gropner, special ed department head, as you know, along with Miss Mays. She'll bring content knowledge in that area and just expertise in that area. Miss Brumley, Miss Lee are going to help me with taking minutes, facilitating meetings. Mr. Gentili and Mr. Isaacs will be our data analyst, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later when it comes to what to expect on the 30th of every month. But we're going to really be specific and hit data really hard in terms of discipline and breaking that down to find out where our areas of concern are the most, and we'll try to attack those best we can. Mr. Moore, he's listed here as teacher liaison, and I put that because if you have any general questions about our PBIS system, then I hope that you will go to him first and ask those questions. And he'll either have the answers, and if he doesn't, he will certainly know where to direct you or find the answer for you. That doesn't mean you can't ask me any question that you want. As always, I'm always available. Each meeting every month, if we can, we'd like to invite 3 students, different students, and 2 parents. Those may be the same a couple times, but we want to get as much diversity as we can. So moving on to a timeline and process for orienting faculty and staff to PBIS. Today, about one group got kind of a very, very quick overview of PBIS at Warren Central High School. One group got started on that very quick overview, and then another group didn't get any. So 23rd kind of fell through, but we'll count this video as that PD. On the 30th of every month, I am going to hold myself accountable for sending out a monthly staff newsletter specific to PBIS. What will that include? It will include discipline data, discipline trends, classroom management strategies, and then other helpful things to continue educating not only you, but helping our staff, our entire staff, to learn new strategies for managing behavior in a positive light. Weekly staff meetings, of course, we'll probably take 5 to 10 minutes and have one of our team members or or another teacher that is willing to offer some knowledge about strategies or what it might be to our entire staff. And then quarterly, I have on here a staff self-assessment that comes from actual PBIS.org or Midwest PBIS. And we may or may not do that depending on what school looks like. So an acknowledgement plan. When you think of an acknowledgement plan, obviously you think of swag tags or something of that light. But let me pull this up here. So the acknowledgement plan pulls up a little bit weird on Google because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a Office guy. So I do everything on Microsoft Office, and then sometimes it doesn't necessarily translate to what I'm wanting it to. But anyways, so our acknowledgement plan. What is our acknowledgement plan? So those things like you think about in PBIS are swag tags, which I know that we didn't hand those out like we should have last year, and that's on me as much as it is anyone. So what we're trying to do is be more consistent with that. A couple people on our PBIS team wanted to have a goal of how many of those to hand out a week, and I think 5 is a good number. So if you guys can shoot for handing out 5 or more swag tags per week to students, then we're certainly going to work on ways to reward those students. So we have 4 different categories. We have immediate and high frequency rewards or acknowledgments. And if you notice here, guys, we included teachers and staff because I think it's as equally important to recognize and acknowledge our teachers and staff as it is our students. Teachers and our culture starts with our staff, and that lends itself to a culture conducive of positivity for our students. So if you look here, we have swag tag, deserving dragon, and then some of it falls on your lot, which is positive reinforcement by the classroom teacher. Notice research says that we should use positive reinforcement in a 5-to-1 ratio, if possible. I know sometimes that might be hard, and then you have positive phone calls home. I put a goal here is to call 2 students' parents per week, and obviously we want to document all phone calls. And then we're going to have a reward store once things normalize a little bit and we're able to do so. And what that is students will be able to cash in their swag tags for things at the store instead of putting them in the weekly drawing. So really quickly, I'll go over how we're going to do swag tags this year. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this acknowledgement system. It would take me 30 minutes to walk you through all of it. You guys can read this on your own time. So swag tags, you will give them to students. You will fill them out for the student. And they can do one of 2 things. Well, first off, right now, all they can do is turn it into the office for a weekly drawing. Eventually, like I said, we'll have a reward store so they can choose between those. Do they want to use it such as like Gettyland or an arcade where they can cash in tokens to get rewards? Or do they want to put it in the weekly drawing for some prizes? So as of right now, we're just going to do the weekly drawing. But once we draw names, we will recycle all of those swag tags and put them in a larger pot for a quarterly drawing. And then again, we'll recycle those swag tags in the quarterly drawing for a midterm drawing and so forth. That way, everyone, no matter when they got incentivized or when they got the swag tag, will receive some type or possibility of receiving some type of reward throughout the year. But weekly drawings will just be those students that got swag tags that week. But the bigger drawings with the larger prizes will include all of the swag tags up to that point. Let me think if there's anything else as far as swag tags go. I think that's it right now. If anything comes up later, I'll mention it. But anyways, you see teachers and staff, a lot of things here. I'm hoping that our admin will be able to write 3 postcards to staff members weekly. I know that I really enjoyed getting those when I was in the classroom. I'm hoping that we're going to have students write swag tags to teachers. We may have some drawings for teachers using those swag tags. And what I plan on doing is the first 5 names of the alphabet in each class we'll do the first week, and then we'll go to the second 5 names of each class, third 5 names. And those kids will be delivered a swag tag, and they will write that and give it to their teacher or give it to me, and I will give it to their teacher. Faculty meeting celebrations, we all know Todd's famous chocolate bar celebration. I love it. Feeds right into PBIS, and I understand. I'm not saying that you guys need positive rewards like students, but you deserve positive incentives and rewards for all that you do for us and our kids. And then Golden Dragon, Miss Bunton takes care of that, I do think. Second category, we have group or class-wide contingency systems. So these are things like class period competitions for kids, grade level competitions. So for instance, in a quarter, when things are back to normal, we can have some larger rewards. The class with the greatest attendance, so say sophomores had the best attendance for a quarter, they may get a free period one day or a movie shown one day. And then Food Truck Fridays, I think you guys enjoyed those last year. What we're going to start doing is rewarding one group of students at our school. So say 1 week it's the soccer team, 1 week it's the beta club, 1 week it's the drama club, 1 week it's the, the band. We really want to incentivize those groups and show them that we care and we recognize them. Then there's midterm, quarter, and semester, which I understand midterm is semester, but and these are things that will happen at the end of the quarter, at midterm, and then so forth. So every quarter, every midterm. So these are like the large swag tag drawings that we will have. Some assemblies, like a large assembly, but at Christmas, I understand we won't be able to do that right now. We'll recognize kids for best attendance. I forgot one thing I was going to say about swag tags. One thing I really, really, really want to make sure we do this year is recognize kids that do right all the time. Those kids that you can think about in your mind right now that, just do what they're supposed to but never say a word, so they often go under the radar. So what we're going to do for that, they're going to have their own separate drawings every quarter based on grades, attendance, and behavior. So no behavior referrals will get certain amount of slips put into a hat, so to speak, and drawn, and you'll be rewarded for grades, A's and B's as well, and then attendance. So we're going to incentivize those kids as well and let them know that we care. But it's also on you to make sure that you're acknowledging that you appreciate what those students are doing and that they act right every day and they do what you ask them all the time. So make sure we recognize those kids as well. And then at the end of the school year, so long-term school-wide celebrations, you can think of things like graduating class cookouts, testing reward day, transition readiness field trip day. Those things obviously will have to be put off until we are able to do more traveling and congregating. And then I really want to, with Mr. Norman's approval, and I'm sure he would like to do this, because I remember early last year to start the year we had a staff cookout. So I'm sure this falls in line with things that he likes to do. I would like to have one at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the year to start the year off and end the year and say thank you for all of your hard work. All right, so That's the acknowledgement system. I know it's kind of long. You can look through here, but really all you have to remember in this is just hand out those swag tags. Use positive reinforcement in your class, not just for those kids that are doing right one day out of the week and you recognize it, but for those kids that are deserving every day. Hey, I appreciate you today for all that you do each and every day. And then positive phone calls home. You'll be surprised at how much respect and gratitude you'll get from parents just making a call home and saying, hey, I appreciate your kid and all that they do to make our class and our school a better place. All right, let me pull this PowerPoint back up. Here are our swag tags. Guys, I didn't really want to be the first edition of our new swag tag, but admin staff was the only ones that I had Bitmojis for. But you'll be happy to know that Jason's wife made him a Bitmoji. So next will probably be our counselors and our support staff and our admin team, such as Todd, Sarah, Lauren, Laura, and those people. I don't want to leave anyone out, certainly. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to have edition after edition. Each month will be a new edition. I'm going to go by department. So if you don't have a Bitmoji, you might want to start thinking about making one. One thing about this. So I do want you to fill out the teacher, your name, the date, student's name, and the location. So where they were doing one of these showing swag, where were they showing respect, willingness to lead, actively engage, or generating school spirit. This will be posted around the school, and this was worked on by Miss Lee and Miss Brumley. They did a great job, knocked it out very quick, and what we did with all of these things is we created them over a 2-week period, then we came back together as a group and kind of revised if needed. So they chose, it's pretty simple if you look at it. We have the expectations on the left-hand side for the school, swag, showing respect, willingness to lead, actively engage, and generating school spirit. And then we put places in the building where we thought we needed to explicitly state or explain our expectations. So you can see all settings, so things that apply to everywhere. Hallways, lunch, bus, technology, and restroom. They did a great job being creative with some of these. I know it's really hard to generate school spirit on some of these things or in these places such as the restroom, but be respectful of school property is always a great way to show school spirit. I will print these out in color and post them around the school in various locations. The only thing you have to do besides those swag tags and positive reinforcement is fill this out. So this is where I want all of your classroom rules and expectations to be, because I want consistency and not just in how we define things, but how we communicate things, right? So a kid walks in the room and one teacher's expectations may be here, and where another teacher's expectations may be somewhere totally different, and another teacher may not even have them posted. So what I want is you to fill this out, make a copy, fill it out, and then I will print it out in color and give it to you. And it's pretty simple. You're going to put things like, so if I was going to fill this out, I would do bell ringer procedure, and then I would do transitions, and I would probably do individual work, group work, technology, then I would do probably formative assessment, and dismissal. And I would probably add a category over to the right hand column, make another column, and put my expectation for face mask, especially this year, and how you expect them to show or follow these swag expectations with the face mask. So showing respect, that's pretty simple. Wear your face mask when you're within 6 feet of someone else, and you can go on and willingness to lead, wear your face mask, or if someone doesn't have their face covering on, be prepared to ask them to put that on, etc. So you guys know how to do this, but this is just an example of what I would do, and then I would go through here and fill these out. All right, so Todd and Sarah did a great job with this. This is our T-chart. So what we heard you guys talk about throughout the year last year was we needed some concrete definitions for what these violations were, what all of these problem behaviors on this matrix were. So we defined every single one, every minor, every major on the district and our behavior matrix. Todd and Sarah worked on this. Like I said, they spent a lot of time on it. As you can see, it's quite a few pages. Now, some of these majors are pretty self-explanatory. Possession of a weapon. Well, we know what a weapon is, and we know if somebody has it. So some of these do not need to be explained. A couple of them do. So cell phone violation, active versus passive. That is one of the toughest ones to define, but it's also one of the toughest ones to manage. As we know, cell phones can be an issue at times, and kids rarely, and cell phone violations tend to turn into majors more than anything else. It's the minor behavior that turns into a major. And you can positively reward kids for doing right by giving them access to their phones while they're working independently, whether it's listening to music. I always would let my kids, if we were working independently and they had done well that day, listen to music, but the rule was you put a song on and you lay it down face down on your desk and you don't touch it again. So again, your room, as long as your kids are learning, actively engaged, and following our expectations, that's what we expect. And also my take on some things when I was in the classroom was that we have to teach our kids to be prepared for life after high school. And, my boss, I've never had a boss that after I graduated high school that told me when to have a cell phone and when not to have a cell phone. In college, they don't tell you or make you they don't have a cell phone policy. So we have to try to train our students also to learn to function in life and in society with a cell phone. They can't get on it when's the right time, when's the wrong time to get on it. But let's go over these real quick, not all of them, just a couple. Cell phone violation, a passive violation, are those things that are managed in the classroom. Easiest way to put it, you have the autonomy, redirect students when they have their phones out. You can also, you have the ability to take their phones, keep them, give them back. I will caution you on that. I've known of people that had phones put in pockets on the door and students' phones were stolen. So make sure that if you do that, you have a safe place to put them. But I caution you on that. But anyways, you have the autonomy to implement your cell phone policy in your class. And Todd put an example here. Johnny had his cell phone out in class. First offense, tell him to please put his cell phone away. Second, you take his cell phone until the end of the period. And third offense, you may result in an active cell phone violation. Here's the difference. Anytime you send a cell phone to the office, it will result in an active cell phone violation. What is that? That means that we follow the discipline matrix. Our discipline matrix for cell phones is very strict. First offense, we take the cell phone for the rest of that day, keep it overnight, and they don't get it back till the end of the next day. Second offense, I think it's 5 days, which actually turns out to be 7 because we don't count the weekend, and then so forth. And I think the third or fourth is loss of cell phone privileges for the year, whether we take them or make the parents come get them and keep them at home. But those are the confusing ones. Just make sure you have a cell phone policy and you stick to it. And don't waver on that because kids will take advantage of any kind of inconsistency. Dress code, just let's make sure we monitor dress code. If you don't feel comfortable addressing it, notify someone that can. Minor defiance, I put some pandemic alerts on here, and one was if a student refuses to wear a mask when asked. That is, it may be a minor, but if a kid will not wear their mask, they're going to be sent home or not sent back to your class. So if they say, I'm not wearing my mask, send them to the office, and we'll take care of that. So you guys can read through these. There should be no inappropriate contact or PDA, obviously. Skipping class is another one. And then let me see. Where's the tardy policy? So I guess skipping class is technically, we could change this to skipping class / tardy. And this is when students arrive after, well, you know what it is, but skipping class has always been 10 minutes or more. I think that was the kind of loose guideline, but our recommendation, and this is a recommendation, not your policy, you can do what you want to, but try to be consistent. I would love to see every teacher do this. Doors have to be locked anyways. Standing out in the hall, my rule was always, and Todd, I think, agreed with me when we talked about this, and Sarah, if you're able to get in your room and the door shut before a student arrives to class, then I always counted that kid tardy, because that's one thing I could do that would say, hey, there's no way you're not tardy because I shut this door after the bell rung, and you're on the outside. So that is our recommendation. Again, if you have issues with tardies, I will make that recommendation that you change to that policy. If that still doesn't work, then we'll take care of that for sure. A couple majors that we might go over. Bullying is a big one. As you know, is a serious accusation, and our district takes it serious, so serious that we have a bullying hotline. So you can read this, the definition, and it's really the essence of bullying is it's repeated, and it's of a person that kind of can inflict, maybe not inflict, but have authority over another via some reason. Defiance as a major would be, we define that as open regard or open disregard and contempt of teacher or staff's instruction. So obviously continual minors can turn into a major defiance. Disrespect, that would be our kind of personal attacks towards teachers. So where over here we have derogatory comments towards students. Here we have disrespect. Okay, so you guys can read all of these. There's no reason for me to go over them. I will say, please monitor and keep an eye on the parking lots. If you see a kid leaving, it's very important. We had a couple kids do this last year, and they actually were gone for days. And we have a couple kids that are marked missing right now, as a matter of fact. So that's really all of that, and you can read as much as you want of this. If you have a question about something, certainly go to this and see how it's defined in terms of what to write it up for. And if you have questions beyond that, then you can just let me know, or Todd or Sarah, or any of the other administrators. All right, moving on. Before plan for teaching desired behaviors, we have something else we heard you guys say and that you would like to have, and that is a discipline flowchart. All right, so let's go over this fairly quickly. So student behavior management process is consistently taught and retaught in your school and your expectations in your classroom. So what that means is you hold students accountable for expectations that you set using that classroom teaching matrix in your classroom. But obviously a misbehavior is your observation of a student not following those expectations. So when a student breaks a rule, doesn't follow expectation, one of two things happens. You got to ask yourself, can I manage this in class, or is it admin managed? Is it something that this kid needs to be sent to the office? So let's go over admin managed first, because it's fairly straightforward. We also listed some things here that would result in admin managed behavior. Certainly not an all-encompassing list, but it is a pretty good start. So you will refer a kid or send them to the office. Guys, 99.9% of the time, a major referral will require you to send that kid to the office, unless you witness it somewhere else beside your classroom. And then you still would probably want to send that kid to the office. But so you will refer that student, send them to the office if necessary. This says in contact parent. We will usually contact those parents for you, but certainly I would encourage you to contact parents. Anytime you write a kid up, I would encourage you to contact that parent and let them know. They may not always be supportive, but the best, we have to do our best to communicate with parents and be open in the worst times, but also in the best times, right? Remember, the goal is 2 positive phone calls home a week. admin will follow up with you or the staff member regarding student behavior. So if it's a major, say it's a fight, we will follow up with you. A lot of times this follow-up will come in the discipline referral that gets kicked back to you. But here's what I'm kind of holding myself and everyone accountable to, is that if we assign consequences that may differ from the discipline matrix, and you have questions about that, by all means, we want you to contact us and we will explain it to you and you only, okay? You deserve to know. Say you send a kid up for refusing to give up their cell phone, but they come back to your class with their cell phone, and you don't understand why. It's on us to explain that, hey, maybe that kid got taken out of his home that morning, and he was trying to get a hold of his little brother, or little sister, or older brother, or older sister, or there was just some circumstances going on in home life that really not an excuse, but may have exacerbated the matter to the point where we felt that if we took his phone or her phone, then it would just make everything a lot worse. That doesn't mean they're going to come back in your phone and be able to use their cell phone, or into your room and use their cell phone. But I think you get what I'm saying there. There may be some extenuating circumstances that require that. And then we'll submit the referral and work with guidance to reintegrate that student back into class if they spend time in ISS, ASP, Jackson Academy, day treatment, wherever it might be. Now, if it's staff managed, first off, we're always teaching these expectations. I would hope that 95% of the kids you have will behave appropriately due to our PBIS system being implemented with fidelity, due to your classroom expectations, because you are your classroom management is so good that you don't have to worry about disruptions and distractions all the time. However, if a kid does not follow your expectations and it's something minor, I would encourage you to redirect or reteach that behavior. And there's some strategies here, but we're going to go over a couple in just a few minutes. That doesn't work, conference with the student, and then talk about potential consequences if that doesn't improve. Maybe that still doesn't improve like you want it, but it doesn't quite meet the level of a referral. Then you might try to contact the parent regarding behavior. And I just put here, don't forget to contact parents regarding positive things as well, and grades. And then maybe communicate with the guidance counselor and work with the student to reteach that behavior, because it might be that you find out through whether it's a restorative practice or social emotional learning strategy that this kid's going through some things and they're acting out of anger, or they're just not in the right mind frame, and that's causing this misbehavior. So you might want to reach out to a guidance counselor and ask if there's anything you can do to help that. So it's either going to help or it's not. Eventually, guys, these lead to minor referrals or major referrals. We can't just continue to let kids act a certain way. Sometimes positive behavior interventions and supports, social emotional learning strategies don't work. So certainly you can complete a discipline referral, and if it's warranted, send the kid to the office. If it turns into a major at any time, so if you redirect and reteach and that kid does something similar but more serious and it turns into a major, you don't follow this continuum. There's always a line from every one of these that goes over here to this admin managed, okay? Some things we will just have to take care of in the office if they reach a certain point. And I hope you know that we support you as teachers in making these decisions. You know, I would love for every behavior to be managed in the classroom. Unfortunately, that's just not the case, and we understand that as administrators. All right, so plan for teaching desired behaviors. I'll go over this really quickly. Ms. Comer worked on this, and this just tells you where and when to introduce your expectations and desired behaviors. So when do you introduce expectations? You can read these guys. How will it be done? When will it be done? We will create and post the matrix that week and a half before we start school. And then you can kind of go through these and see. This just gives you an idea of when and where and how you should be teaching these desired behaviors. So here's a plan for pre-correcting and reviewing. And then this just says how you implement social emotional competencies. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this slide deck or PowerPoint. Actually, talk about it now. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is an entire curriculum on its own. However, social emotional learning and restorative discipline practices fall under the PBIS umbrella. So they're all kind of one big dynamic, program or structure in a school or system, but they also have individual components. Once we get really good at PBIS, then we can start focusing a little bit more on social emotional learning. Once we get really good at focusing on social emotional learning, such as those identification things, like if you do a check-in, check-out, whatever it might be, then we can move to restorative discipline practices. But trying to combine all three at once and do them with fidelity or perform those three things with fidelity is very, very hard. So what I want us to focus on is implementing PBIS Tier 1 to the best of our abilities. And then I'm hoping that throughout the year and next year we can add another focus, which will probably be social and emotional learning. That's not to say that this is not a focus now, but a lot of this stuff is handled in guidance with Ms. Cummer and those kind of things. But to start social and emotional learning, I do want you guys to start thinking about these 5 competencies and what they mean and how you can teach them in your class. So CASEL, which is CASEL, you can see it at the bottom down there, is the leading organization. You can go to casel.org. It's the leading organization on social and emotional learning. And they have all kinds of resources on there, strategies. If you want to do social and emotional learning in your classroom, that's perfect. But I will tell you the district is working on a screener for social and emotional learning that we're probably going to pilot that just lets us screen kids for social and emotional health and well-being. And then hopefully, like I said, in the future, we can implement a system of social and emotional learning or programming that plays to social and emotional learning more so than just positive behavior interventions and supports. So real quick, self-awareness. It's pretty simple. I'm aware of myself. I know when I'm getting angry. I know when I'm sad. I know when my thoughts may not be rational. So like it says, identifying emotions, self-perception, self-efficacy and confidence, those kind of go hand in hand. But you can think of these kids that don't have great self-awareness. They're not great at understanding how off the chain they are right now. I know that I get like this sometimes when I get angry or when I'm tired. But we also are adults, and in that, and as professionals, we understand that we can kind of navigate our social and self-awareness a little better than some kids can. So think about ways to teach that. Just talk about self-awareness. Talk about these things, and that's the start, and that's how you start teaching kids social and emotional skills and competencies. Second is social awareness. So first I have to be aware of self. Then I have to be aware of my social surroundings and people around me. So that's things like knowing who I'm around and what I can talk about. So if I'm around, first off, I believe that I shouldn't be talking about things that I couldn't say in front of everybody anyways. But take things into perspective. If I'm around, just like those of you that have young children, you may watch some shows on TV that you don't, so like Game of Thrones. I know that used to be a huge thing, but I tell you right now, I don't want my kid watching Game of Thrones. So that's not really social awareness, but that's the same concept. Know who's around and know how to act in different places. So another example would be out on a Friday night with my best buds. compared to in a meeting with Mr. Norman. I'm going to act totally different. Not saying that I'm going to have a different personality, but there's a way to act in different places. And we have to teach kids that location and presence, who is there, and what you're there for, dictate a certain type of action. Then responsible decision making. A problem arises. I'm aware of self. I'm aware of those around me. I can analyze the situation, and I can evaluate different solutions to the problem. And then after making that decision, I can kind of reflect and see and make changes based on that decision for future events. Self-management may be the most vague, or the one that can be or the one that has the most ambiguity. So it says the ability to successfully regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations, effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself. I think of this as these three into one. If I have social awareness, self-awareness, and learn to make responsible decisions, then I become able to manage myself. And then after I can manage myself, then I can work on those relationship skills. And guys, those of you that are married, those of you that have boyfriends or girlfriends, or I know that you all have, one thing that's for sure is that communication goes a long way in relationships. So we have to teach our kids how to communicate effectively and have that social awareness, to know who they're talking to, know where they are, and know how to communicate in different settings and in different ways and be effective at that. You need to be clear, you need to listen, and be cooperative. And then talk about social pressures. Talk about conflict and how to negotiate it, but how to navigate conflict. One thing that our world and our country is becoming very, very bad at, or is very bad at, is negotiating conflict. It seems like if you can't agree with someone, or if someone doesn't agree with you, then they're just wrong. And our kids see that every day. So we have to be the voice of reason, saying, we need to have constructive conversations. And it starts with us teaching them how to do that. So I understand this is very vague. It's probably not what all of you wanted. But just remember, teaching these things, you can do that in your daily instruction. Talk about self-awareness. Talk about social awareness. Talk about responsible decision-making, self-management, relationship skills. And in terms of maybe not saying relationship skills, talk about communication, teamwork, and those types of things. So that's kind of the end of PBIS and SEL, social emotional learning, for now. What you guys are responsible for in terms of implementing PBIS, making sure we're positively praising those kids that do things right all the time, but may have some behavior issues, and show growth via swag tags. Just praise. You don't have to give a swag tag all the time, but praise them. Really, PBIS is meant as much for the teacher as is the student, to remind them to praise their kids for positive things. Listen, I grew up in a house where there wasn't a whole lot of positive behavior intervention. It was, if I didn't do it right, I got hit with something. It just depended on what was around when my dad decided that I wasn't doing things to his expectation. So I'm not a huge fluff person, but I've seen this work. Seen it work in numerous locations and numerous places. So we just have to do it with fidelity, with consistency. And the last thing I want you guys to fill out is that classroom teaching matrix. And I'm going to say that probably needs to be done on the 11th. By August the 11th, it will probably only take you 15 to 20 minutes. And then if you can get it to me by August the 11th, I'll make colored copies for you. We can put that in your room. So now the last thing I want to do is go through these questions from this survey that you guys had. Okay, so I'm going to try to address some of these. Some of this will pertain to COVID. Some of it will just pertain to questions in general. Okay. First question was, what are your greatest concerns regarding implementation of PBIS at Warren Central? First, let me say I hope that I've addressed a lot of these already. So teacher buy-in. Obviously, that is a concern of any type of new program or system that you're implementing. So I'm going to put that back on you guys. I'm asking you to buy in and give this a chance. Really work hard to be cognizant of yourself and praising those kids, even when you might not be having the best day. Because I promise, the bad days that you have, there's a lot of kids that are also having those bad days that need us to be positive. That's not saying you can't have a meltdown or a breakdown every once in a while, because I certainly have and still do. So COVID-19 PBIS, I'm going to be honest with you. If kids are at home, we may still try to do some PBIS in terms of grades, attendance to your classes, buy-in on the students' behalf, and we may put those in a hat and draw them. So we may still try to do some things like that. But as you know, if we're not in school, there's not going to be a whole lot of positive behavior incentives and interventions and systems and things to practice. Consistency. I hope I've addressed that. I'm not going to start something and not be consistent in it. And that's why I have such a strong team around me, because if I'm not consistent on some things, I hope they hold me accountable, and I'm going to do the same with them. If they're not doing what we agreed to do when we started this, then I'll tell them, but I expect them to tell me just as well. One question said, how do we ensure we aren't overlooking kids that always do things right but may be quiet? I think I've addressed that question. The lot falls on you guys for that some, but we do have systems in place to make sure those kids have a chance to be rewarded via drawings and things. How do we make acknowledgement systems more meaningful? I hope that by looking at the acknowledgement system that we presented, or that I presented earlier, that was created by myself, Mr. Isaacs, Mr. Gentili, Ms. Potter, and then all of us looked over it, that you know that is intentional and that is very meaningful. Equity. So what about forgetting about those kids that behave appropriately all the time? Is another same question as before. But in terms of equity, make sure we're being cognizant of our implicit biases. We all have them. I have them. You have them. And reflect every once in a while on if you're doing things in your classroom equitably. In terms of, am I offering one group of students, giving them more swag tags than I am another group, but they're both showing growth and positivity in terms of behavior. And then resources. I will tell you guys that I've applied for a grant. I don't know if we won that yet. We did win a grant for 130 Chromebooks and 130 internet connectivity stations to go into homes. But I haven't heard back from the PBIS grant yet, but I hope to soon. But regardless, we can be very creative with our resources. What information would you like to have regarding implementation of PBIS at Warren Central High School? I think I've answered most of these. So you have easy access to the information on our shared drive. I've given you our staff and student expectations, and we've outlined how we're going to measure those. Behavior matrix, and this says how detention will look this year and its effectiveness. I will tell you, Ms. Daniels has went to great lengths to put systems and things in place in our ISS room, and worked with Mr. Hunter to ensure that these things are going to be consistent and followed through on. And then as far as tier students and being consistent with those, we're working on a way to mark those in Infinite Campus. And then obviously, if you have a student that's causing you issues, you can look at their schedule, and I I would advise you to just talk to those other teachers and see how they handle them, if they know of anything that might work. Cultural responsiveness and pandemic, how it's going to look in pandemic and remote learning. How can we help students and families during this time? I will tell you that our district is doing a ton. Our Family Resource Center, Ms. Jame and Hurley, are doing amazing things. As far as cultural responsiveness, there's all kinds of organizations that are going above and beyond to try to make sure that we're being responsive to not only the cultures we come in contact with, but the cultures in our overall community. And I know that's not exactly what cultural responsiveness is, but that kind of goes along with equity and what we talked about earlier. Strategies that work with students in this. So here's what I want you to look at. I'm not going to go over it all with you. But in the packet that I'm going to give you, there are a lot of resources for this very thing. So I'll show you a couple of them. So here's one. It's a continuum of response for inappropriate behavior. So it gives you some ideas for how to respond to inappropriate behavior in a continuum, kind of like the discipline matrix that or the discipline procedure that we looked at. This is the general information session, I hope. How often are students selected and how many? Every week we'll do a drawing. Every month we'll do a drawing. Every quarter, etc. How many? That depends on resources and other things like that. Set of teaching aids that outline the core elements of PBIS. I hope that this packet and this handbook that I give you has all that in there. When to handle a situation in class and when to send to the office. That is exactly why we created that. And I don't even know where it is now, but the flowchart. So that is exactly why we created this flowchart, to help you identify those things. And then how often will students be recognized? Like I said, we'll have immediate high frequency, group contingencies, semester midterm contingencies, and then end of the year contingencies. What information would you like on social emotional learning? I will tell you this. This is where we're going to be. I'm not going to be able to answer all of these questions. But I would advise you, if you want tips to promote mental health in the classroom, talk to Ms. Cummer, talk to our guidance counselors. In terms of implementing SEL at the high school level, that's kind of slowly coming from the district. We're going to start with a social emotional learning screener, hopefully soon. Tools to deal with COVID and Black Lives Matter. Guys, I don't really know how to go about, I don't have a lot to say on that. Just be as supportive as you can, but encourage cooperation, communication, and those types of things. And I think if you practice those 5 competencies, that students will understand that, our students are really good at being aware of our other kids anyways. So it's my hope that, if this comes up in class, just emphasize cooperation, communication, understanding other people's perspectives. And again, you have to be the model. And then how do we best address social emotional needs and who to take them to if we cannot handle them? If you are, we talked about in our PD in the evening or the afternoon today, some things like some screeners you could use. So that's one way you could identify them. If you know that a student is struggling with some social and emotional needs, then obviously guidance or Ms. Cummer. I would send them to guidance or walk them to guidance, call guidance, and then generally they contact Ms. Cummer when they feel like the situation needs someone with that expertise. So that's what I would do. And let me emphasize one thing. Social emotional learning is about teaching kids to manage themselves and be productive in life and society. It's a little bit different than their social emotional needs and mental health, but they all kind of form the whole child, right? So we're trying to teach kids social and emotional competencies that will in effect have positive benefits on their social and emotional needs and mental health. Explicit strategies for teaching social and emotional learning. Like I said, I would visit casel.org. They have all kinds of resources on there, along with materials for high schools. And then as far as preparing new teachers for race issues, implicit bias, and recent societal changes, we're all still trying to adjust to race issues and recent societal changes. And I say adjust to race issues, I mean how to handle some of the social injustices that we see. How do we talk to kids openly and communicate with them about these things? I will tell you that I'm probably not going to be the one to bring it up on my own, but you may have kids that come up to you and or say something out loud in class about inequities or social injustices. And again, all I can tell you is to emphasize, let them know you care about them, emphasize communication, love, compassion, and if you feel like it's a larger issue or a bigger issue in terms of mental health, social emotional needs, then contact a counselor or Ms. Comer. And last but not least, what questions do you have regarding PBIS and social emotional learning that can be addressed during our PD on the 23rd? So I will say that PBIS has been proven by a very extensive amount of research to be effective in promoting academic improvements, social and emotional improvements in high school students, engagement improvements. It improves the culture and climate of the school. All these things, and you can look a lot of these studies up online. I'm not going to go into that for sake of time. What guidelines are being used to identify social emotional needs, I guess, in students and teachers and staff. Again, the district is working on a screener for students, and that might work just as well with staff. How can we support students who have been out of school for an extended amount of time and may have suffered traumatic events? This is my number one concern with not returning to school. Ms. Jame told me today, or yesterday actually, 75% of DCPS reports come from school officials, teachers, counselors, administrators, staff members, and that is mainly because we're the adults in their lives that they trust and that they tell what's going on. They tell what's going on in their lives to. So I worry, and she told me that they're gearing up for what they expect to be a large increase in those reports because we've been out of school for so long. Implicit bias training, that is controlled by the district. We'll probably hear some more about that soon. I would love to do a book study on equity and implicit bias. You guys shoot me some options. I know the person that posed this question wrote some options in there, but you guys shoot me a couple emails about equity and implicit bias, some books on that kind of thing. I have some ideas as well. We'll kick one off. And how can faculty and staff encourage students to follow basic school guidelines for their own benefit? Again, I think those classroom and school-wide teaching matrices will be effective in that, and just continually hammering our expectations in class, in the hallways, etc. Will hopefully have a positive impact on our students. And they will learn and understand that, hey, if I follow these school guidelines, then we'll all benefit. Last but not least, what will our newest teachers need to be successful with PBIS? I will tell you this: positive attitude, build relationships, and recognize students for doing the right thing. Those three things will get you a long way with not only PBIS, but in the profession, in my opinion. So use this handbook that I will put in your mailbox for anything PBIS. Certainly ask any questions. I'm right at an hour. So it's a little bit over the time allotted for our PD. I think it was 55 minutes. So I've kept it pretty close. I will leave you with this video. I'm not going to play it. I would encourage you to type in removed child video in YouTube and watch this. It's about a 13-minute video, and it gives you a snapshot of what students go through, or an example of what they may go through at home, and then what they bring to school. So just be cognizant. Anytime a student acts up, try not to be reactive. And I say acts up when they misbehave or don't follow expectations. Try not to be reactive. I know it's hard sometimes. Try to think in terms of why. I always like to ask myself, why is this student doing this? Most of the time, there's an underlying reason, and if we can find that reason and try to correct or try to improve whatever that is, a lot of times we can take care of kids that are behavior issues or are misbehaving or acting out. At least I know that in my short tenure as an administrator, when I ask myself why, and I do some digging, and I find that core element to that misbehavior, generally I can take care of it and at least improve it some. So I appreciate it. I hope that you guys enjoy this presentation. I know that it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of information. But if you have any questions on PBIS, feel free to text, call, email myself, any of those team members. They can answer as many or more questions than I can. Again, we have a tremendous amount of resources at Warren Central and Warren County Public Schools. Let's use them. But most of all, let's focus on being the best teachers and the best people we can be for our students. Again, they need us more than ever. So when we do go back to school, be positive. Try to build relationships, even with those difficult students. I can think of one right now that I've tried for a year to build a relationship with. I've sent them to Jackson Academy, ASP 2 or 3 times. Haven't found what's worked yet. Nothing's worked yet, but I'm not going to stop until they graduate or until I figure it out. So don't give up on any kid. I know you guys don't. And that's why we have the best staff, in my opinion, in the state. I have awesome administrators in terms of not myself, but Miss Daniels, Miss Bunton, Mr. Norman. Great support staff, awesome counselors. Todd and Sarah do a great job. And then even extending that onto our classified staff. So again, I'm lucky to be in the position I am. Cherish every second of it, and I love coming to work. I'm actually really ready to go to school because I want to see our kids, and I miss you guys. So holler if you have anything. Thank you.